film for, so like when I watch film with quarterbacks, there's different things we say we're going to do today.
Okay.
So today might be a formation day.
Okay.
And basically what we do in a formation day is we can watch two other teams, but what we'll do is we'll watch an old game of us versus someone else.
Okay.
And I'll have them call the other team's formation in our language without stopping the film. So they have to get it before the play runs out.
Okay.
All right, they have to get it before the play runs out. The reason I do it with other teams is because other teams aren't running our formations. Now, some teams are, you'll get basic stuff, some spread or some, 11, which we call bird or whatever, harpo and things like that. But they'll have to use our trigger words. So we have about 7 trigger words within our formation that kind of tells you where a guy is going to go.
Okay.
And so they'll have to look at like what someone else is going on. And you give me about 5 minutes, and then we'll go. We're gonna just doing a little interview here.
So I don't like
I'll be right out, Mike. What that does is that's teaching the words to the kids. So if a kid can spit that out, he understands the quarterback's in pistol, he's not in gun. He understands they're in C formation, which means the offset back, C up formation. Okay. The offset back is to the strong side. Okay. The strong side for us would be the call side, which would be the slot side. Okay. He knows that the slot is inverted over there with the inside guy on and the outside guy off.
Right.
In reality for us, sometimes there's plays that require invert, sometimes there's not. I remember one time we had Alan Sampson who played for us, and he had played at Gaither previously.
Yep.
And he had come over, and at that time we had Aaron Murray, right? We were basically using 2 formations, spread and spread trips.
Okay.
So 3x1 and 2x2. And we had some outliers once in a while and things like that. Alan said that when they broke down our film, with 54 formations. That we had 54 formations.
What?
And we really had 2. And we only called 2. We don't call it something else. So it might be a play that is indicating, like probably everybody in Tampa knows our play Nike, our 3-bunch route set.
Right.
That seems to work regardless of whether people know it or not. And probably most people know that. But we don't call spread, trips right, bunch, gun left, right 62 Nike. We don't call that. We just call trips right, gun left, right 62 Nike. They know based upon the play that Nike's going to be that way.
Right.
If I wanted to trick it up and I wanted a motion, so I want spread, gun left, slot, motion right, right 62 Nike. If I wanted to trick it up like that, those 2 guys, the Z and the Y, they know they're in 2/3 of the Nike bunch set because the other guy's coming. We don't have to tell them to invert. We don't have to tell them bunch or anything like that. So a lot of times the play indicates where they're going. But it's important that they know that our kids know the words.
Okay.
So there'll be times that we're watching film with our quarterbacks. We're just going through formations, and they're doing another team so that they learn how the words apply. They're not just memorizing formations.
Okay. How do you go through film by yourself?
Right. So here's what we'll do. And I usually sit with the quarterback and do it. So the quarterback will sit with me, and we'll go through it because I want him at the end of the day on Monday when we input the game plan. We have our meeting and we have our install meeting before we go on the field. I want him to give that meeting as if it's his game plan.
Okay.
He put it together. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to do 2 things, and we're going to do 2 things at the same time. Well, let me take that back. The first thing that we're going to do on Saturday after we watch film as a team of our game Friday night is a quarterback and I are going to sit here and we're going to watch 2 games of the opposing team without pens in our hands.
Okay.
All right. And really I will rewind it sometimes, but without rewinding it or going forward. Because I want to know what the big picture is of what they're trying to do.
Okay.
What do they try to stop? And as the head coach, I'm not just going through their defense too. I mean, I'm the offensive coordinator, but I want to know the whole thing. So we'll watch the whole game, the quarterback and I. And then we'll sit down for about 5-10 minutes afterwards and we'll have a debriefing. What is this team trying to do? And he'll even tell me on offense too. This is a team that wants to downhill run the ball with a tight end, with a big back, and they're going to try to do that 70% of the time, and that's what we need to stop.
Okay.
On defense, they're going to try to get pressure with the front 7, and they're going to play 4 deep across the back and just not have you beat them deep.
Okay.
With that as you go. So general impressions, because I felt my first couple of years that I was really breaking stuff down, I felt like I got so tied into the minutia that I often would miss the big picture. Like I got into the numbers and stuff like that, and I would lose, like, what's this team really trying to do?
Okay.
How are they really trying to stop us? So the first part of that is to find games that are similar teams to yours, or at least run similar stuff.
Okay.
There's certain teams in years past that are great. I love watching Jefferson film, because Jefferson offensively runs the same kind of formations that we have throughout the years.
Yep.
They'll run spread, but they'll run 11 personnel too. So it's good to watch that. So there are some games that you'll watch, you'll get into, and this doesn't mean that a team's good, bad, or whatever, but over the past years, like watching Riverview film, not Sarasota Riverview, watching Riverview film, like that doesn't do us any good, because they're going to be in a wing tee or or two wings, and it doesn't do us any good to watch it. So you have to choose the right film as well. But so then after that process of watching 2 games, just watching it to get a general impression, writing down some notes, then we're going to do 2 things. We want to learn what are their strength priority rules.
Okay.
All right. So at Planet's different depending upon who we're playing, but generally, it's different all the time. But it could be field, tight end multiples, back if they're 2x2.
Okay.
And you have to chart, I would say, about 10 to 12 plays to find out what their priorities are. Because at first, and we do that, so what are their priorities?
Mm-hmm.
Tight end, multiples, field, back. And then we do personnel evaluation at the same time.
Okay.
The reason we do that at the same time is because personnel is going to help you determine what their strength is.
Right.
So, hey, we're looking at number 2, and he's on the right here, which we are thinking on the first play, that's the strong side.
Uh-huh.
But then we actually get into it and we realize, oh, he's not the Sam, he's the Will.
Gotcha.
So you learn that from each play. You learn maybe a little tidbit of information. So 10, 12 plays in, we think that we usually have what their priorities are. So I want to know what their rules are. I tell the quarterback, I said they have to have rules.
Uh-huh.
The teams that are hardest to play against sometimes, they may not be the best teams, but the teams that are just out there willy-nilly doing whatever.
Right.
Like, so I'd say there's 2 different kinds of games. There's personnel game and there's scheme game.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So sometimes you look, Venice is a great example.
Okay.
All right, Venice is a great example. Venice does hardly anything. Venice has 3 running plays on offense.
Mm-hmm.
Has a base pass offense. They're going to take the hitch if you give it to them. They're going to run the go.
Yep.
So they're going to run a 2-way go if you give it to them. They're going to check to that. They have probably about 10 pass plays out of it. On defense, Venice is a 4-4 cover 3.
That's it.
And you say a 4-4 cover 3, you're like, we're going to kill that 4-4 cover 3.
Right.
It's the way that they play it. It's not a scheme game.
Okay.
You will put it on the board. I can scheme up great plays against 4-4 cover 3. I got great 4-4 cover 3 plays.
But
I look at it and but then you play Venice and you're like, man, that 33 with the long hair, he's way harder and more physical than we thought he was.
Right.
You rode up and on paper looked like we blocked him pretty easily on paper.
Right.
But we didn't block him for real when you put your slot wide out against this guy who's, squats 550, and you didn't really know that when you were watching film. All right. So that's how we kind of learn personnel. So when we learn personnel, we're not only trying to learn personnel of who they are and what they can potentially do. I would say, honestly, probably 3 or 4 times in my career at Plant have we actually schemed against a singular person.
Okay.
All right. I told you about that Armwood game when they had 99 a couple of years ago, and we had Rex Culpepper. He came up to me after the game, and we had beaten him, and he came over and shook my hand. He said, "Coach, you scared me." And I said, "You call it scared, I call it smart." I said, "You're a very, very, very good player,
right,
and we wanted you not to be the impact on the game." We very infrequently will scheme against a singular person.
Okay.
All right. But so now we're going to look at this situation here. Like I said, we're not in this formation a lot, but as we look at it, we're going to see in their pass pro, what kind of pass rush do we get? We get the Sam dropping to the flat, so we see that. We would tell right here that the strength of that their call to the strength, even though it's into the boundary, is to the multiples. So we know that multiples, there's no tight end here, so we don't know that yet. So we know that multiples comes before field here already.
Okay.
And the Sam's on the edge, and the Sam's going to take a look inside on the run play. So we know that he's peaking on run. We would put in our notes already that he's somebody that we want to play action off of a little bit, because we see that he's peaking in there. We also see that the far side safety in the tunnel is down low.
Okay.
All right, so this isn't quite 4 across here, but it kind of plays like that, but he kind of plays like an outside linebacker, so we want to see how he's going to play the rest of the game. Because normally if we have a lone side guy, if that tunnel is available, we're going to find a way to take that tunnel.
Okay.
But that guy's aggressive right there, who's standing right on the L,
Right.
and we want to see how he plays as it goes throughout. So we go through there. Running plays are going to give us a little more indication here. Again, probably if we were with the quarterback, we'd have him call this out. This is one of our 11 personnel plays. This is good for us. We get to see 11 personnel. One of the things against Lakeland, and you don't really get to see this because this is an Isoh play. If you look at this in an Isoh play, it looks like they're in an over to the field here.
Yeah.
So probably, we don't know this yet because it's multiple as well, but it's probably tight end. It's probably tight end multiples field is what we have. Now we know personnel. If we were just taking it down, this guy who's just above the L, that was the Sam who dropped into the flat before.
Mm-hmm.
So now we know he's actually the Sam, so we can give him a moniker.
Okay.
On the second play, we know that the defensive ends are not going to change, because the Sam was over on the other side before, and the kid with the white long sleeves was still down at this end.
Yep.
And that's important for us to know, because we'll shift formations if we have guys that are going to be changing all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So now we know that the linebackers are going to flip-flop, but the interior linemen are not. And it looks like they're in an over front, and it looks like they're ISO blocking. This was a big play for us versus them. So sometimes you become a copycat team, and you determine how you're going to do it. We didn't do it out of this formation, but we saw that you can see that defensive tackle that's on the strong side. The 3-tech is really more of a 2-tech, right?
Yeah.
So the double team down to that linebacker is going to be an easier double team. And then if your tight end can handle that outside guy, and then one thing, of course, you don't know it at this point in the film yet, but one thing that we learned is that outside guy, if our tight end or our tackle,
The Sam out here?
yeah.
Okay.
So if he tries to turn him out, that defensive end is going to stay outside, and he's going to try to hold his outside position. But if he goes down on a down block, that guy's going to squeeze inside right off his butt and try to run with him. So that's one thing that we learned on film with that. So what that does is that makes trapping very difficult, because that guy's going to squeeze right there.
No space.
And honestly, Lakeland will use a play where he's going to squeeze and he's going to undercut the trapper. We did learn, and we learned very much from this film, because Winter Haven was very effective running ISO against Lakeland. So really, you look at this on paper, they're going to kick out this guy, they're going to double team down here, they're going to wrap around the guard, which is for us called ribeye. This guy's already blocked because of how far tucked in he is. They should have an escort leading up, and their good back, this Marlowe kid, who's a good player, was able to use that effectively throughout the entire game. So this was very much a concept. This ISO concept was very much a concept we went into the game saying that we're going to use. Okay, so now, right, and this happens a lot when you're doing those first 10 plays, right?
Yep.
You're doing those first 10 plays, and I pretty much said assuredly a minute ago, hey, the backers switch, but the linemen stay the same.
Okay.
Now I'm on the third play, and here they go scrambling with that long, the guy who's wearing the long shirt.
Yep.
He's scrambling to the other side.
Flip side.
So here we go on that, and maybe this is just in power formations. Maybe it's in 3rd and 1 or something along those lines. But now I have to retool what I said a minute ago, and that happens a lot.
Yep.
This guy for Winter Haven, he was not their starting quarterback at the beginning of the year.
Nope.
And really came on late in the year and did an amazing job. And you knew going into this game that between Lakeland and Winter Haven, even though it seemed like kind of a mismatch, you knew that it was going to be a ball game. We want to manipulate the other team. as to where we want them to be, and we're going to manipulate them in several ways. We're going to manipulate them by formation. We're going to manipulate them by pre-shifts and motions.
Okay.
And then we're going to manipulate them by the spacing of our concept, our route concept, or our run concept. And then we're going to manipulate them by the quarterback can manipulate them with the stripe of his helmet and the way that he moves the defense.
Okay.
So those are the 4 ways that we're going to try to move the defense into the place that you want. The one thing, of course, you learn against a team like Lakeland or Armwood or, those great teams that are, you got to be down in and down out. Like this sounds great sitting here in my room. We're going to manipulate Armwood's defense.
Different
If
story.
you do it 5 times throughout the course of the game in the way that you want it, then you've probably had you've been successful.
Right.
There's 45 times that you're not doing it. And
Right.
You're just hammering away. Can I get 3 or 4 yards out of it as you go? Okay, so this is it. I tell our quarterbacks and I tell our running backs and I tell our wide receivers that regardless of whether the play was to you or say that we called a passing play and we didn't throw it to you, you have to do one thing on every play for us. And you have to collect data.
Okay.
All right? Quarterbacks do it naturally because it's part of their makeup of what they do.
So look how shallow the secondary is right
Yep.
now.
So 2 years ago when we played, and just so this is an important point, I think, when staffs are somewhat consistent, Armwood, Plant, Lakeland. I mean, I keep saying those 3 things. Like, you can be 100% assured that Bill Castle remembers 5 years ago that we had James Wilder and ran the ball effectively against us. Like, I remember every single play that they beat us on. I'm sure he remembers every play that, Matt Thompson, a Jesuit, when 2006, they blitzed us from the weak side, which they had killed us on all the time with the wheel blitz. And then finally we popped a 79-yard run with Lavelle Jackson out the back door. Honestly, they didn't blitz us again for 2 more years after that. Not just for the rest of that game, for 2 more years after that. So, like, I know that Matt has from memory every single play. We probably don't remember the good plays that we had, but we remember all of the plays that we got stung on, and things like that. So every single one of these things has a history.
Okay.
Every single one of these plays, and the history is not just what's on film this year. It's like, okay, what have we done before? I will often go back. I have I don't know, this giving away too many secrets, but I go back and Mike Walsh, who is really one of our film guru guys, he goes back and puts together packages against certain teams of what plays historically have been successful. It might be 8-9 years ago, and it might be completely different guys, but for some reason, certain plays just may work well against. So we might dress it up completely differently, and then run kind of the same kind of thing. So you mentioned that, how tight the safeties are. We do have our quarterback call middle of the field open or closed and where the mic is at the beginning. The real reason for that, though, like the center's calling the protection and the quarterback can check the protection if it's different. But the real reason for that is not that I need the quarterback to tell anybody else that the middle of the field is open or closed. If he says the middle of the field is open, he's actually looked at the safeties and he knows how close they are. So if they're playing too high like they are, like they were 2 years ago when we lost the game, but our biggest play was Michael Murphy with a fullback route up the middle. So if they play like that, we're going to try to take that middle hole from them every single time. If they play 7 yards away from the ball, and if they play as wide as they are. So that's absolutely something that we're putting in our notes every time. Now, the last part of this, just to let you know, so after we've done this and we've gone through it and we've recognized strength and we've recognized personnel, then I do, without the quarterback, is I'll go in and I'll chart the game. All right, so I'm charting their blitzes and I'm charting down and distance and I'm charting field position where it is, so that I'm learning what their tendencies are in calls. So then I keep that on a chart of my own when I make my down and distance play call chart, and that's not something that the quarterback really deals with too much as we do it. But that gives me the numbers that will run through the tendency numbers of when they run certain things. It's way easier to do that for an offense because it's way more definable than it is for a defense. But we've got it down in our own language. No one else would really understand it, even if they looked at it.
Right.
But in our, it's really not even our own language. It's my own language because I'm the only person who needs to know it because I create the chart and the data out of it from there. And that's the way we do it. We have Sean Love will take a look at their front seven, and he'll recommend some run plays as we go, and we'll have Robert Marv will recommend some pass plays as we go. As I'm charting this as well, I use the left side. This is old school. I use the left side of my paper. If, as I'm watching this, a play comes to mind that I like, I will write down that play and circle it. All right, so all potential plays are circled. On the right-hand side, if there's something that they do that I just want to take notes of, so the right-hand column is notes, the left-hand side is plays that might work well against them, and the center is actually drawing up the plays and charting it with the numbers and their strength and things like that. So at the end of the day, I'll have at least a whole file folder filled out, and I'll be able to look at it. And some of those plays I may not end up using, some of them do, because then from that I create a 40-play script. Most people script 10 plays to begin with. I script 40 plays. And that gives me the order with which we're going to practice plays in practice.
Gotcha.
And so we cover those 40 plays. Now, we have situational periods too, goal line, third down, and +5 or whatever. But that script, that 40-play script, will tell me when we have a team period, I'm doing plays 1 through 15 in this team period.
Gotcha.
The second team period on Monday, I'm doing plays 16 through 30 in that. Tuesday or Wednesday, we're picking up the rest of them. We're going back to them. We want our kids in some way, shape, or form to interact with the plays anywhere in between 7 to 11 times a week that they've interacted with each play, whether it be in a walkthrough period, an install period, a meeting, or out there running it full. And that's what we try to do. That goes from the bare bones of install to the actual implementation of when we use it in a game.